Travels of the Ellis Arbor is an audio narrative set in the world of Bastion using 5e compatible characters. Tune in for episode 21, Iris. The haze of shrapnel, blood and gore now subsided to reveal a broken and battered crew of the Ellis Arbor. The screams and crying of battle hushed, and the Pleiades Cathedral awash with the awkward lapping hush of stunned silence. Their combat that night surely roused the suspicions of the townsfolk. Few in the briny ward could shy away from the intriguing sounds of gunfire and gore. Least of all should any wander into the cathedral. Darian, Carpathian, Edward, Moore, Nout, and even the furtive Arvel would be accosted and taken for questioning. There could be no doubt of the implications of their actions. And so, wiping the remnants of viscera from his hammer, Darian turned to Arvel, who, with a sheepish stare, bid them follow down a shadowed path and out of the cathedral grounds. As it turned out, the lone survivor of Killian Bisk's gang was an expert smuggler. In fact, moving those who wished not to be seen by the city proper was his main recourse. A career to fall back on should his path of misconduct ever dry up in its economic usefulness. And, as fate would have it, both his wallet and life now lay bare at the mercy of Darian and the crew of the Ellis Arbor. And so a painstaking few weeks lay before the crew, crammed into supply crates and hurled onto the back of a merchant wagon. An exchange of gold and a promise of further remuneration. Arvel managed to scurry them to a safer part of the realm. The Meladonian coast was more than a city. Its walls were so vast and towering that few could cross it in over a week, let alone crossing it unannounced. But Arvel, despite what his recent actions had broadcast, was cunning and swift. His skill in evading guards and patrolmen, as well as the eyes of interested merchants, was impressive to say the least. Within 3 merchant crates, garishly emblazoned with the colours of Artoul's opulent sundries, Nor and Moot shared one. Carpathian took a crate to his own, and Darian shared a space with his gunsmith, Ed. Silently and swiftly, they listened to the jaunt of the cart wheels, skipping over stone and shale as they were hauled to some far-off part of the coast. Hoping to go further inland, avoiding further confrontation with agents of the Lady of Blood, the crew agreed to their destination. A quaint village on the outlying walls of the Meladonian coast, and as far inland as they could manage. The Hemvala parish sat quietly nestled between 2 larger settlements, just off the road, and with little more interesting landmarks than a tavern, a workshop, and a farmhouse. Surely, the eyes of the law would have to search hard to scry the crew there. As they await their destination, Darian pulled the glass canister, within which the Ellis Arbor now floated harmlessly within a sea of clear water. Her sails blew as if caught in a hot morning breeze. The faint cracks of light that shone between the bars of their wooden prison gave the appearance of dancing lights within the hull and glistening off the pure white sails. It was then that Edward spoke up, in a hushed, curious tone. "Is everything all right, Captain? You seem as if you're lost in thought."
"Quite. Never you mind, dear boy. It has been a long and tiresome journey thus far. I'm simply trying to keep my mind on other things."
Edward shifted a little, moving so as to meet Darian's eye as he spoke. "You know, you only take that ship out of your pocket when you're worried about something. Don't think we haven't noticed. You can't keep all things from us, despite your trying." The captain looked up to meet Ed, and Darian's gaze was somehow fixed on Edward's face, caught somewhat unawares.
Is that right? Don't take my meaning wrong, but I hadn't imagined that you would be all that interested in my thoughts. You all have concerns of your own, and I'd rather not pry where my opinions aren't required. Perhaps I've misunderstood your intention.
You know, you can't keep secrets forever. Some things are better off shared, if you can help it. That's why we all signed to be your crew, did we not? To help each other find answers. Darian's breath quieted into a sigh. His lungs began to relax as he was reminded of those times. A young, ambitious captain with his crew at his side. He recalled those first moments that the wind caught the sails of his vessel, and his band had joined him upon their first voyage.
You are wise indeed, and your memory serves you well, Edward. Speaking of answers, how is your eye? Have you been monitoring its changes? You've scarcely taken off your goggles since we arrived in this accursed city.
Edward's countenance shifted. He recoiled to his corner of the box for a moment, and thought long about the captain's inquiry. After a moment, he reached for his goggles and pulled them over his eyes to his forehead. Rubbing them gingerly, he tried to catch the light enough for Darian to see. You tell me. I've not been all that interested, to be honest. There's been little change since the initial one. Do you see anything? Rarely did Edward reveal his eyes. The artificer's goggles that adorned his face were more a permanent fixture than he would have liked. All for the sake of that one curious blemish that the captain now surveyed. As the light caught Edward's face, he winced for a moment, before opening them clearer to see. Edward's right eye was a cool lilac color that reflected a clear, young, handsome face. Though as the light passed over his left, the change couldn't be any more distinct. Where the soft lilac color was in his right eye, it was replaced by an angry, deep red. The kind of crimson they had witnessed in their previous encounter. And where a human circular iris should be, it reflected a cat-like oval, as deep and as black as the night sky. As Edward blinked away in the harsh streetlight, it gave that same reflection of red and black, a startling contrast from the other. Though, as far as Darian could recall, they remained identical to his last inspection.
All seems well. Well enough, anyway, for one with a heterochromia. Not everyone gets the chance to be a host to a devil's eye. You know, you needn't be so concerned with its appearance. With Carpathian nearby, you're hardly the most infernal creature on our crew.
I know. I guess I just hoped to forestall people's questions. Few good things can come of a devil's eye. Not as far as commoners are concerned.
Well, it's a good thing you don't travel with mere commoners, then.
Darian paused for a moment, thinking upon the other grievances that Edward had reported upon first receiving his blemished eye.
Do the voices still occur? Have you heard any whispers since the first time?
No, thankfully. The voices have been somewhat hushed of late. It doesn't exactly fill me with peace, but I am relieved to get a night's sleep every so often. Darian held a quiet smile, glad to hear that Edward hadn't experienced any more of the nightmares that plagued him early on their journeys. He recalled the nights where he had cried out angrily and fiercely, banishing the voices from his dreams. Each and every one of his crew bore one or other kind of mark that haunted them. But he cared the most for Edward's curse. No boy of his age should endure the perils, of whispered nightmares. As they continued their conversation well into the morning, the cart continued along the road toward the Meladonian exterior. Fewer and fewer travelers passed by their cart, and comfort and contentment swept over the crew as they felt more certain of their escape. Though, as the lights crept forward into morning, the faint sounds of other wagons and carriages caught their ears. Even in their exhausted haze of aches and pains, they could hear the early morning merchants going about their preparations for a day's travel. And no sooner had the melody of merchant carts begun, their own cart began to slow. Hushed voices turned into the sharp kind of conversation that only comes from being hailed. The distinct clatter of metal armor and strong bellowing voices rang above the mess of marketplace noise. From what he could make out, Darian counted at least 3 voices, each coupled with the sound of armored footsteps and a conversation between them and Arvel. A sinking dread fell upon the crew as the town guard began to inspect the cargo in which they were now held captive. Travels of the Ellis Arbor is made possible by the generous support of our subscribers, followers, and most notably, our patrons. Thanks to all our Moon, Wedge, Crown, and Hex tier patrons for supporting us so far on this journey. Please subscribe, give a like or a comment, follow us on Twitter, and stay tuned for the next episode. Don't forget, take care of each other.